Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite studio, we have Callie Cox, U.S. Investment Analyst with eToro, to discuss the launch of the third quarter Retail Investor Beat Survey out of eToro. Callie, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to MarketSite.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Based on the survey, how would you say investors are faring these days?
Well, I'd say they're optimistic, more optimistic than people are painting them, but they're getting skeptical. I mean, they're worried about inflation over the next 3 months, which tells me that inflation is still a problem, clearly, but people feel optimistic about the economy. There's a reason why inflation is picking up again. At the same time, they're still worried about a recession and they're stashing cash away. So they're encouraged by their current situations, but they still can see what we're seeing around us, all the uncertainty.
How are they thinking about tech stocks and themes specifically?
So this is what was interesting. Usually tech stocks are the top owned sector in these retail investor beat surveys that we do quarterly. And that's no surprise, right? We all know the tech stocks, they're all over the headlines. But this time around, financials or banks were actually the most owned sector, which tells me two things. Investors see opportunity in banks, clearly, but also I think that they're becoming a little more skeptical of tech, which makes sense. We're in a high interest rate environment. I mean, speculative tech doesn't do as well, speculative companies don't do as well, and investors are clearly feeling that and preparing for it.
It's also about different demographics as well, and we hear how different generations view the economy, how they approach the market. Tell us what you've seen at eToro.
Yeah, so we've seen that younger investors are just across the board more confident than their older counterparts. And I think that there's an interesting story behind this, right? I mean, younger investors have held stocks in crypto. They've gotten a little more hammered on the risk side of their portfolios, but older investors have some risk and they've been hammered on the bond side as well, because stocks and bonds, of course, dropped at the same time during 2022. I think there's also a job market story here. A lot of the wage gains we've seen have been concentrated in younger and lower skilled workers, which of course those are younger investors, millennials and Gen Z. And we've seen a job market that in a more subjective way has catered to a more flexible worker, which I think has been taken up more by younger Americans.
How do you think younger investors are approaching the future? You have to think about student loan payments coming back online. How do they feel about how liquid they are and being able to make those payments?
Yeah, well, that's the big story. I think it's a little overblown right now. We consider it a risk, but not one that we think could make this economy fall apart, even though the consumer is the strongest part of the economy right now. And we saw in our survey that the vast majority of younger investors expect to invest the same amount of money or more money than they have over the next 3 months than they have for the prior 3 months. That tells me that millennials and Gen Zs aren't worried, and that makes me feel good about student loan payments and how the footing that investors feel like they're on right now to make those payments.
Interesting. I wonder if the financial media and some analysts have the narrative wrong. I mean, according to the survey, it looks as if they're more optimistic than we've been hearing in the media.
Yeah, and that's what I got from that survey as well. And I think some other data just shows us that it's not as big of a problem, although the student loan crisis is a problem, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to the economic impact, millennials are coming into their economic power. Gen Zs aren't too far behind. They've benefited from a few trends that have shifted over the past few years. So I think they're in a good place.
All right, Callie, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.